There is a well inside the Forbidden City that tour guides still point out today. Nothing marks it as special. But in 1900, a young woman went into it and never came out. Her name was Consort Zhen, the Emperor Guangxu's favorite. And the woman almost certainly responsible for her death was the most powerful figure in the empire, the Empress Dowager Cixi. Nothing about this palace, on an ordinary day, suggests what's coming. That's usually how these stories work. The end arrives fast, inside a place that looked, right up until that point, completely stable. This happens in the final chaotic hours before the entire Qing court flees the capital, as foreign armies close in on Beijing during the Boxer Rebellion crisis of 1900. Thousands of small decisions, like the one about to happen here, were made inside this palace every year, most of them never surviving in any record at all. To understand what happens in that courtyard, you have to go back nearly 2 decades to a girl who arrived in this palace as almost nobody, the same way most concubines did. Zhen enters the palace as a teenager, selected alongside her older sister to join the harem of the newly enthroned Emperor Guangxu, a young ruler still fully under his aunt's control. Cixi controls this selection from the very start, choosing every woman who enters her nephew's harem, arranging the exact hierarchy she wants before Guangxu even has a say in it. Almost immediately, something unusual happens. The emperor, surrounded by consorts chosen for him rather than by him, is genuinely drawn to her. She becomes, quickly, his favorite by far. Their bond seems to have been genuine rather than purely political. 2 young people quietly interested in a wider world neither of them was ever permitted to actually see. She is curious, outspoken, interested in the wider world, photography, foreign languages, new ideas arriving from beyond the palace walls. In a court built on obedience, she stands out immediately. Zhen and her sister enter the harem the same year Cixi selects her own niece as empress. 3 very different women bound together by a single, politically calculated ceremony. Even Cixi's own chosen empress is politically vulnerable in this arrangement, dependent entirely on remaining useful to the woman who selected her, which makes Zhen's independence an even greater threat. That immediately makes her a problem. Cixi has chosen the empress herself, a niece meant to secure the family's continued influence over the throne. Guangxu's obvious preference for Zhen threatens that plan directly. She develops a genuine interest in photography, one of the first women in the palace to experiment with it, using a camera brought in through a relative with foreign connections. Cixi begins disciplining her almost immediately for offenses that read, in the record, as strikingly minor. Wearing the wrong style of clothing, speaking too freely, behaving with too much independence. The punishments themselves follow familiar palace patterns: extended kneeling, temporary confinement, public humiliation before other consorts, designed to correct behavior without leaving obvious permanent marks. She is demoted more than once over the years, stripped of rank and quietly restored, a pattern that makes clear exactly who controls her fate, regardless of the emperor's own wishes. Her older sister, Consort Zhen, entered the palace alongside her and shares much of her fate throughout these years, disciplined and demoted in parallel, though she survives what Zhen does not. By 1898, Guangxu is an adult attempting the 100 Days reform, sweeping modernization that terrifies the conservative court around Cixi. Zhen supports him in this, openly and without hesitation. Her support for reform wasn't purely symbolic. She reportedly helped pass messages and documents between Guangxu and reform-minded officials. A real, if modest, political role most consorts never touched. When Cixi crushes the reform movement, Zhen's association with it makes her position immediately worse. She is accused of interfering in politics far beyond what any consort is permitted. She is confined to a remote courtyard, her belongings and privileges stripped away, effectively imprisoned inside the same palace she once moved through, freely as the emperor's favorite consort. Guangxu, by this point already confined to his own lake pavilion after the reform crackdown, has no power to protect her. Both of them are, in their own separate ways, prisoners now. The cruelty of the arrangement is almost geographic, close enough that each could sometimes glimpse the other's roofline across the palace grounds. Too far and too watched to ever actually meet. Attempts to pass messages between the two confined lovers are reportedly intercepted more than once, eunuchs loyal to Cixi making certain the couple has no way to coordinate or comfort each other. In the summer of 1900, the Boxer Rebellion reaches crisis point. Cixi makes the fateful decision to support the anti-foreign uprising. Foreign legations in Beijing come under siege. The siege of the foreign legations stretches on for weeks, drawing in nearly every major foreign power at once, turning what began as a local uprising into an international crisis. Inside the palace, officials argue over whether to negotiate or resist. Cixi listens to both sides, but the decision, as always, will be hers alone to make. An international coalition of armies marches on the capital in response. Within weeks, it becomes clear the court cannot hold the city. Cixi decides to flee west, in disguise, immediately. The evacuation happens fast, in a matter of hours. Officials scramble to gather what can be carried. Everyone left behind, everyone considered a liability, has to be dealt with before the court departs. Later accounts name a senior eunuch, Qi as the one who physically summoned her that night, though even his exact role is disputed between competing versions of the story. According to the most widely repeated account, Cixi orders Zhen brought before her one final time, hours before the court's departure, on the pretext of a final audience. Every minute the court delays its departure increases the danger from the approaching foreign armies. Whatever is about to happen to Zhen has to happen fast, with no time for deliberation. The official reasoning given afterward is that a young, attractive imperial consort could not be allowed to fall into the hands of foreign soldiers entering the capital. Her safety, supposedly, demanded it. Her usual guards are reportedly reassigned that same evening, an unusual gap in the normal watch that some later accounts point to as evidence the outcome was already decided. What happens next comes down to us through servants' testimony rather than official record. She is led, or dragged, to a well in a quiet corner of the palace grounds. According to the accounts that survive, she is thrown in, whether by direct order spoken aloud, or by eunuchs simply understanding exactly what Cixi wanted without needing to be told. The streets they pass through are eerily empty. Most residents who could flee already have. The city Cixi is abandoning is, in these final hours, already beginning to feel like a ghost of itself. Within hours, the entire court is gone, fleeing west toward the safety of the interior, leaving the capital and whatever had just happened in that courtyard behind them entirely. One of the eunuchs present that night gave an account decades afterward to a foreign researcher, by then an old man himself, the story visibly worn smooth by years of repetition. This is where the story gets genuinely difficult for historians, because almost everything we know comes from servants' testimony recorded years afterward, not from any contemporary official record. The official court record barely mentions it at all. A brief, vague entry, no names given, framed as an unfortunate accident during a chaotic evacuation. The silence itself is suspicious. Interviewed separately, decades later, several surviving eunuchs gave accounts that agreed on the broad shape of events, but diverged sharply on smaller, telling details, exactly what you'd expect from genuine, imperfect memory. Later, eunuch memoirs, written years after the fact, largely agree on the broad outline but disagree on smaller details. Who actually gave the order, who carried it out, whether Zhen resisted or went quietly. The first theory, and the most commonly repeated one, is straightforward jealousy and long accumulated resentment. Cixi had disliked Zhen for years and used the crisis as cover for a final act of spite. At least one private diary from an official in the capital that week gives a version sharply at odds with the sanitized palace account, though he never dares publish it openly in his lifetime. That same week, officials linked to the earlier reform movement are also being rounded up elsewhere in the city, suggesting Zhen's death may have been one piece of a wider purge, not an isolated act. The second theory is colder and more political. A favored consort with reform sympathies, left behind and potentially used by foreign powers or reformist factions, was simply too dangerous a loose end. The third theory shifts the blame partly away from Cixi herself. That palace eunuchs, anticipating what she wanted without an explicit order, acted on their own initiative to please her. Choose one, and you've already decided how much direct blood you believe is on Cixi's hands versus how much belongs to a system built entirely around anticipating her wishes. No follow-up investigation is ever scheduled. The report is filed, the matter closed, and the palace moves on exactly the way it always did after any inconvenient death. A formal inquiry technically exists in the record, but its conclusions are vague enough to satisfy no one, closing the matter without ever naming a single person as directly responsible. When the court returns to Beijing roughly a year later, Cixi has Zhen's death publicly reclassified. She is posthumously honored as having drowned herself out of loyalty rather than been killed. Every word in that posthumous title was chosen deliberately, the difference between a virtuous sacrifice and a covered-up murder resting on a handful of carefully selected characters. This is not a small distinction. A consort who drowns herself for honor is a virtuous story the dynasty can tell. A consort murdered on the regent's order is not. Guangxu, still confined and powerless, receives the sanitized version like everyone else. Whatever grief or fury he actually felt, the record gives us no space to see it directly. Only years later, after both Cixi and Guangxu have died, is Zhen's rank posthumously elevated by the new imperial court, a quiet correction nobody was willing to make while Cixi still lived. Guangxu is said to have visited a small shrine dedicated to her memory in his final years. One of the few moments the historical record allows us to see his grief directly. The well itself survives, preserved inside what is now a public museum. Visitors today can look down into it, exactly the well a young woman died in more than a century ago. Historians who study this period still describe it as one of the clearest examples of how palace record-keeping could be quietly rewritten, not through outright lies, but through careful omission. The placard beside it gives the bare outline of the story, careful and brief, the same way official Qing records once were, though for very different reasons this time. We will likely never know the exact words spoken in that courtyard, whether Cixi gave a direct order or simply let her wishes be understood without saying them aloud at all. The palace itself never changed shape because of what happened to her. It simply kept standing, the way palaces do, indifferent to which of its rooms once held a person worth remembering. What we do know is this: a young woman who dared to be curious, outspoken, and loved by an emperor who couldn't protect her, disappeared in minutes, and the record almost let her disappear completely too.